Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Medical Mindset Coach podcast. My name is Freudenberg, and I am your host for this podcast. And as I've said before, hopefully in the future there might be some co-hosts to join, but for now it's all me, and hopefully that's okay. So today is episode 3, and I'm very, very excited because the topic that I'm about to speak about is something I'm extremely passionate about and something I find super key and super important that everyone should know as a basic essential health tool, because knowing what to avoid in terms of food allergies and intolerances is so critical to your fundamental health. Because and I always liken it, your body is like a car. If you keep putting the wrong fuel in your car is not going to function at optimal level. And eventually at some point in the near future, your car is just going to break down because it's not functioning. So the logic is you'd never put diesel in a petrol car. And, people would laugh at you being like, obviously, completely, that's so true. So why are you doing it to your own body, And at some point, sometimes these things are going to become irreversible, because this is where it creates the foundation for disease and illness, because this is the first step where something gets created, a problem starts arising, left unaddressed becomes disease, illness, and sometimes even fatality, when having the simple knowledge would actually just reverse all of these lifetime buildups of problems. So today's topic is all about food allergies and intolerances. So the most sort of common thing I get from people is actually, what is the difference between an allergy and intolerance? So there is quite a clear cut between the two. And interestingly, however, they do sometimes and generally manifest from the beginning as the same kind of symptoms, but an allergy can lead to a fatality, so anaphylactic shock. And, everyone sort of compares it to eating that peanut and then you can die. Whereas an intolerance is just a succession or a group of different symptoms that just cause basically an irritation in the body. And unfortunately, a lot of people with the misconception that symptoms that they're experiencing, which are intolerances, they just liken it to, it's just because I'm getting older, it's just part of getting older, or, it's in the genetics. And it's like, no, you just don't know how to feel your body properly, but let's get you the tools. So there's lots of wonderful tools out there to be able to help with that. So I offer basically all of them in clinic, so it makes it accessible to different people for different affordability levels. So you can get there's 4 different ways that I offer it. So let me put it that way. You can get a hair test performed. You can do blood tests. You can do something called kinesiology. So it's basically using your own body and seeing when we put food into your energy field or your circuit to see how you respond to it. And then there's a technology that I use that incorporates Chinese medicine principles and quantum physics that can scan your whole body and then tell me what is not responding well, or your body's having a food allergy or a sensitivity reaction to it. And ideally, you would want to basically go cold turkey as quick as possible and eliminate it out your diet. So in essence, you need to see some foods as basically like poison, and that poison is affecting you. So you don't want to just slowly wean yourself off. You just want to go cold turkey, get it out your system, and then allow your system to start going into that detox state and flushing it out. And then you can do detoxes such as juicing, exercising is really good, Epsom salt baths where you sweat it out, saunas, or even another even more powerful modality that I offer, which is colonic hydrotherapy, where we can just get it straight out and literally almost instantly after the session remove all of the toxins toxin buildup and inflammation and mucus to really start getting your body, and then hydrating your body sufficiently to really get it quite quickly back on track. And that's why there's such power and beauty in colonic hydrotherapy, because the results speak for themselves. A person comes in, as soon as they leave, they can feel instantly different and improved. So it's really, really lovely. So going back to it, what is an allergy and what is an intolerance? So when I was trained, what you have to understand is an allergy is something that you're born with. Typically, in terms of the population, about 2% of adults have allergies, whereas an intolerance is about 45% of people who suffer from intolerances. And allergy is something that you're born with. It's for life. You can't remove it. Whereas an intolerance is a food that you've either overeaten, in terms of the quantity, amount, or, sometimes people follow the same diet every day. Or there was an imbalance because maybe you were at a party or a wedding or on holiday and your body just said, whoa, this is just too much for me right now. I can't handle it. And now I'm responding. And again, I really, really appreciate the high level of intelligence of the body, because I always say you need to see being ill as a good thing, because if your body didn't show you signs or symptoms or express itself physically saying I'm ill, we would never know something was wrong, and then obviously wouldn't address it to a point where it becomes irreversible or otherwise leads to a fatality. So, there are some people that, and you'll hear these stories or even know personally stories yourself where people go, I mean, this person was so healthy, and then they just passed away. It was so unexpected, on the books and on paper, everything was fine. Don't know what happened. And it's just cases like this that, people just didn't know what was wrong. But typically when you start getting common symptoms like headache, bloating, cramping, fluctuation in your weight, or sinuses or mucus buildup, so whether that's phlegm in your throat or blocked nose or, blocked ears, skin conditions, so eczema, psoriasis, acne breakout, change in your hair, blood pressure changes. When you eat things that you start feeling really, really tired, or you have a lot of bloating or gas or water retention. Obviously dehydration. Sometimes people can even faint. There's quite, even brain fog, memory fog, concentration issues. There's so many related symptoms to the food you're eating. And it's really, really true that the saying goes, you are what you eat. So, if you eat junk food, you're going to feel like junk. If you eat really good food, you're going to feel good. But even going further to the next step, what I say to people is, we're quite conditioned in society to believe certain foods equal good. So broccoli, instantly like, oh, that's healthy. Spinach, celery, cauliflower, cabbage, fruits, vegetables, all of these kind of things, meats, protein, carbs, everything's good. But the question truly is now, is that good for you? So what do I mean by that? So basically all the cases that I deal with clients is people are following a very good typical diet, but they're finding that their body's not reacting properly, or getting really, really bloated, or cramping, not being able to go to the toilet enough, because typically a person should be going to the toilet at least twice a day, at minimum 1 to 2 times a day. But if you're going once or not basically every day, maybe, because I've had some clients that haven't gone to the toilet up to 6 weeks to 2 months. Is frightening. That's telling me that you have constipation, right? So if you're experiencing all of these symptoms, it's telling me that you are unwell, and you got to understand what are the triggers. So, I use a very, very good example. I have a client who's a marathon runner running excessive amounts of kilometers each week, and never done a allergy/intolerance test until she came into my clinic, found out her arch enemy is kale. And, the common response is like, what? That's so shocking. Kale's good for you. Kale's good for you. Yes, but is it good for you and your constitution and your bioenergy field? In your circuit, is it good for you? So, in her case, it wasn't. And of course, every day she's sacrificing an enjoyable breakfast for a green smoothie, thinking that this was right and ideal for her health and nutrition, but obviously not, because what she basically was doing was ingesting just a different form of poison that wasn't agreeing with the body. And equally in my case, I tested for the strange ones for spinach and grapes. So, I would always drink wine, especially when I was in corporate. So when you go to sort of dinners and, corporate events, and I always used to feel really, really strange and odd. Like my cheeks would tingle, my brain would become disorientated, and my concentration, and I felt very out of balance and then instantly bloated. And I thought, oh, this is really odd. And then when I found that out, it was kind of like, oh. And it's really funny because that was actually the doorbell, but I think this is good timing. So it was like, what? Like this big buzzer in my life was like, wow, so many questions have been answered now. So I think it's a really, really powerful information tool. And the beauty of this is that with an allergy test, you can test it once and, for life. So it's something you invest in once, and it is an investment because depending on which level you go to, but I always advocate to do the blood test because that's the most accurate in my mind, because, you're going straight to the body fluids. So it's really, really good. Whereas intolerances, interestingly, you can fluctuate annually. So it's always good to sort of see, if you feel that as you are progressing in the year that you're finding your body's responding to more things, then you can always do an annual retest if you wish. So it's really up to you. Going back to allergies and intolerances, like I said to you before, so allergy is something that you're born with and sort of it's developed from infancy, and that is what it is. And, sort of just once you figure it out, then you understand and then you know how to manage it better. Whereas with an intolerance, it can arise at any age. So, even since a baby, maybe you get fed too much milk, or you eat too many sweets, or you have too much pastries or cakes, or etc. Or even innocent foods that are, again, in perception recognized as good, but not good for your constitution. It can develop. And sometimes it might develop as well as a result of that your immune system's low, your digestive system becomes weak, and then you eat quite hard or difficult things to digest or break down. And that will have its knock-on effect, causing an intolerance. So there's quite a common condition that I work with in the colonic hydrotherapy modality, where people have something called SIBO, leaky gut. So SIBO just basically translates or breaks down to small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And leaky gut means that the lining of the intestinal wall becomes damaged because food that's supposed to have been broken down properly in the stomach and turned into soup, because we have acid in our stomachs to basically break it down, any food, hard, solid pieces, into a soup, which we call chyme. And then that liquid is supposed to go into the small intestine as a liquid. And if you're not digesting your food properly, whether you eat too much, you don't have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach, or you don't digest, or there's really, really quite a number of reasons as to why you don't, that might go in at a solid state into the small intestine and actually cut the intestinal wall and scratch it, if you will. And I always like to use visuals, sort of like a cat claw, just sort of scratching and creating damage. And if you want to imagine the small intestine, it's thinking about like if you go to the shops and for a barbecue, you're getting small sausages, that's basically sort of the same texture, the same fragility. The skin is so fragile and weak. So the slightest tear is very easy to occur or arise. And interestingly, the small intestine is quite big in the body. It's like on average between 22 meters, about 22.8, so 23 meters for the average person. So it's really, really a big, organ in the body. And if that happens, the small intestine gets damaged and opened, through being wounded, then you can't absorb the nutrition of your food. So in the small intestine, the function predominantly is to absorb all the nutrition and the energy of your chyme, of your food, of your liquid, the purpose of eating. And if you're wounded, then again, your body can't break that food down and absorb. And therefore, again, intolerances will occur because your body is reacting, saying, I can't break this down, I can't absorb this, and I need this out my body because this is not healthy. And that's again why you will experience lots of symptoms. So people don't know this, and then sometimes people get this big bulge after they eat, sort of in the middle part of their stomach, and it's not the whole stomach, sort of distension that looks like a whole balloon. It might be just put on the upper part. But again, all the symptoms that I've mentioned before, that's quite common that people will experience. And again, what is that? Abdominal pain, cramping, gas, bloating, even vomiting, feeling tired, getting headaches, migraines, skin issues. So again, sort of like eczema, acne, psoriasis, then having constipation or diarrhea because your body either doesn't have enough hydration to let it out, or perhaps your body's like, this is completely toxic for me, I need to eject this out immediately. So then you'll have bouts of diarrhea. And then again, you are what you eat. Hormones are made in the gut. So if you start experiencing moods like depression or sadness, low mental health or anxiety, then again, this is a result of your gut health. And again, what are you putting in for your gut? Sometimes even respiratory issues arise, such as rhinitis or sinusitis. So again, if you're feeling those kind of symptoms, and also quite common joint pain, swelling, fibromyalgia, myalgia, I can't seem to say this word, and arthritis. So, it's interesting because how these symptoms can arise or express themselves, there's not a specific timeline. So sometimes it can take seconds. Like in myself, when I eat something within 3 seconds, I'll notice my cheeks start to tingle. Then I feel quite unwell. And then I think like, oh no, I've booby trapped myself. I'm going to have this. So it can take up to hours. It can take up to 3 days to appear as well. So, sometimes it can actually be difficult to pinpoint, the reaction, to a certain food or link it to a certain food or multiple foods, which is quite interesting, right? Whereas they say that's for intolerance, but whereas they say for an allergy, it's either immediate, so like you've seen probably in movies or heard stories, someone can eat something like a peanut and then poof, they can die quite immediately, or they have a span of 2 hours or less. So I remember my first witness of an allergy was my ex-boyfriend's brother, who's a chef, and he worked in a protein-based surf and turf restaurant, and then sort of overnight he developed an allergy where he started breaking out in spots, and turned out then now he's got an allergy to shellfish that he didn't know about because he never used to cook the seafood side. He always used to cook the meat side. Something along those lines. I'm not really sure, but basically he was really, really ill and he was off work for a week, and then he had to go on quite intensive antibiotics and medication to obviously help and, calm him down. So it was quite severe. And very, of course, stressful. But that was my first encounter. So then I witnessed sort of the expression of how an allergic reaction can express itself, right? But obviously in myself, it's, the common ones: bloating, headache, fatigue. So I've just sort of made this joke expression now called farcolepsy. So I always say now with the education, sometimes I go, okay, I'm in a situation at a party or a dinner or over at someone's house where they're serving food that I don't eat as a result because it will create an intolerance. And then you kind of like, okay, well, I have to do it for whatever reason. And of course, if you can get out of it, you can. But sometimes it's just those exceptions that you just can't. So you know that you're basically making a decision that it's going to affect you. And I call it food narcolepsy because you always feel like you need to sleep after. So, and then I just say, the F word. And then I go like, narcolepsy. So if that's PG-13 enough, I hope. But yeah, basically just saying it like that. So we're getting the narcolepsy symptom out there. So basically, if we go back to the food, so there's three, if we want to get sort of more technical and scientific about it, there are 3 levels of food sensitivities, right? And just remember how I've classified it. You have an intolerance or an allergy, but overall the umbrella or the group term is called sensitivity. So you can have a full-blown allergy under this hierarchy of sensitivity, or a food intolerance or a food sensitivity, right? So again, the allergy, it's life-threatening. Intolerance, again, potential symptoms can appear within a couple of hours of ingesting of what we call the offending food item. And sometimes it's quite difficult, especially if you're eating a mixture of combination of food groups. And this can relate to, again, many things, but basically, in summary, the person cannot break the food down, right? So then, right, what do you do? You got to learn about what is triggering you. So getting educated about your health. So doing a couple of different tests, 1 test, 2 tests, within the affordability range that you can do them. But basically with allergies, it's triggering the immune system to respond. And again, this can be in the state of an anaphylaxis. You can have lip swelling, throat swelling, difficulty to breathe, severe panic attacks, and even loss of consciousness. Yeah. So it's quite severe. But then with sensitivities and intolerances, the digestion system is being triggered to respond. And then that's when you get the symptoms like bloating, gas, tiredness, skin problems, weight gain, and so on. And I always say like water retention, irritation. So with intolerance and sensitivity, sometimes the substances can be consumed in moderation, or if you have something that supports that breakdown, which we call digestive enzymes. So this is nutritional supplementation that I do recommend. And there's a couple of different ones with different brands that I work with. So maybe it's the fact that you might not be able to break down dairy, so lactose intolerance. Then we would give you a special enzyme for that. Or maybe it's carbohydrates or fats or proteins that you can't break down. So that if there's different reasons, or even sugars, if there's different reasons you can't break down a certain food group. And again, with the bioenergetics test that I perform, this full body health scan, it can tell me what you're struggling with to break down and metabolize, and why that's resulting in malabsorption in the body. Right? Because essentially boiling down, the whole function of eating is basically just to convert the energy from the food into your body. So you eat to get energy. So if you're eating and getting no energy, then there's really no point. And that has its own sort of knock-on disastrous effects, because what happens is, what I see all the time in clinic is people are eating, and then with time, they're not getting the energy. So their energy reserves are depleting and then further depleting. And therefore they're eating more and they're eating more. And then they're getting more weight gain. And then their body's getting more stressed. And so when the body's more stressed, it needs to detox more. And when it needs to detox more, it's needing more water. But then you're not drinking enough water, or your level of water that you're drinking is not meeting the needs of how much water you need. Therefore, your body's going to a state of dehydration. And then you're getting constipated, then you're not actually excreting sufficiently and properly for what you need. And then that food that should have been excreted is now sitting in your body, and it's actually starting to rot, causing chemical reactions. And then that's having these knock-on effects of brain fog, fatigue, not sleeping properly, water retention, skin breakouts, etc. And then you're getting really, really tired. So what do you go and do? Then you start going for junk food, greasy food, high energy food that's unhealthy, like sugars, chocolates, sweets, pastries, because your body knows from memory that when I eat this stuff, I get an energy boost, right? Then you go and start eating all of this junk food. Then it starts creating this huge spike in your insulin levels. Then you're going to start getting sugar crashes. Then you get sugar crashes. And then what do you start doing? You go grab more sugar, and then you start eating excessively more, adding more unhealthy calories to your diet. Then probably if you're into caffeine, then you might start going for more coffee, more tea, even green tea. And then you think, okay, this is giving me more energy, but equally these are diuretics. So then it's further dehydrating you, and it has this severe sort of evil, vicious loop cycle that it's never ending. But what do you do? And then you compound that over your life, then your body's just really getting quite damaged, and then your moods and hormones are now affected, your nervous system is affected, and your endocrine system is affected, your hormone system, so that then basically you're putting everything out of whack. But to just correct that, all you need to know is what you should be eating right for your body type. But of course, when you've now had this whole compounded buildup of problem, you need to come for a reset. And again, coming to my clinic, being able to figure out all of these things, clean your body out, and then we get you into the next stage, is what I call the maintenance phase, and sort of just being on top with obviously the full support that I offer, in terms of, are you allowed to eat this? Can you do that? What should you avoid? What's a good substitute? And equally, like I say, because I sort of become like the food police to people, because people get scared, like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. I've went to a party, I went to a wedding, I've been overseas, I've been on holiday, I've eaten bad. don't hate me kind of thing. And it's like, no, that's okay. But how lucky and fortunate are you that you have the knowledge and the power and the skills to quickly come for, a quick emergency appointment, reset your body, and then can get you back on track. With the skills, because then again, this is exactly the purpose of my work, is I've empowered you to know what to do and what not to do, so then you make educated decisions, but then you also are accountable that when you're going to make let's call it a naughty or a bad decision or living life, that at least you have the appropriate tools to know how to bounce back, rather than having a dependency on highly qualified experts who don't share their knowledge with you. You just have to sort of figure it out yourself and not always making the right decision. So I cut all of that middleman stuff out the way and give you all the skills that you have. So it's really, really lovely. Interestingly, so food sort of is classified as biochemical, and when we're talking it in the technical sense. So going back to what I've said before, is it right for you? At the sense is, with the advent of so many diets on the market, people are actually becoming so confused, I mean, I've heard so many diets over the years that I've, pursued and tried. And, some now, I look back with the experience and knowledge that I have, I just think like, how could this have even been sold off as a diet? Like, I remember seeing Kellogg's Special K, when I was a child, like, eat this bowl of cereal 3 times a day for 2 weeks and you'll drop, I think it was 5 kilos or something like that. And, now I just think that was just pure sugar and wheat and, so much milk. And to someone who's got a wheat allergy / intolerance, or to dairy or sugar or both, that's awful. And again, sort of just thinking back to, the sugar spikes and drastic declines, then that might create diabetes or insulin insufficiency, or even, blood pressure problems, or, some people, if it's to deal with fats as their go-to, might create cholesterol problems, which have a knock-on effect on creating liver disease or heart disease. So, it's quite vicious. So, and it's quite difficult. And I think we're living in this interesting era or age of, again, is this really a new fad where people are going quite like, you need to be vegetarian, you need to be vegan, eating meat is bad. But is it really? Like, yeah, if we had to, if we could actually remove out the ethical aspect of it, but just leave it sort of in the food and nutrition aspect, there's some people out there whose constitutions need meat. I tried to be a vegan for 4 years, and it was really, really detrimental on my constitution, that I had to seek some, health assistance. And then they were like, you're a South African, you eat meat, you're raised on meat. how did you just think it was okay just to remove this from your constitution? And then as soon as I got I needed sort of this validation that I was safe and okay to go back on meat. As soon as I ate meat, I was like, wow, I feel so much better. And I feel a little bit silly due to the lack of my experience back then and knowledge back then that I was actually causing more harm than good. But it's just because I was getting programmed by society's conditioning saying, don't do this, don't do this. But, okay, maybe not good to eat meat from a, generic food shop like Tesco's or Sainsbury's or anything. But if you go to a farmer's market, it's better. And that applies same for fruit and veg because of, the insecticides, fungicides, pesticides getting more organic. Because these equally also have a knock-on effect on our immune system and our digestive health. So, and again, this is all playing to gut health, and your moods, your mental health and gut health. They are so fundamentally linked to each other, that people don't sort of appreciate it. So it's interesting that, and I'm saying this out loud, but maybe a lot of people know or don't know this, but we have a brain in our head, and Western society has painted that the brain is our mind, the brain is our first brain, blah, 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 blah. And then they've come out with like articles and, proving it later on that we have a second brain, which is in the stomach. But now, if you actually go back into sort of the ancient technology in Chinese medicine, the first brain has always been the stomach, because everything is controlled by the stomach. Everything is controlled by gut health. Your immune system, your hormones, your endocrine system, your blood sugar levels, your moods, your circulation, your immune system, just everything is so key to this thing functioning well, that if people appreciated it more, I think food choices would be instantly altered, and more stringent and strict protocols would be followed. And probably to a point that probably industries like, or companies like Famous House Brands, which is the group shareholder that owns the big things like KFC or McDonald's, Burger King, all of these kind of companies might actually sort of just dissolve, because, people, if they knew what was going in these things, would be terrified to know the reality of what they are putting in their mouth. I think if you had to see things for what they really were, rather than how they were recreated to look more aesthetically pleasing, maybe choices would be different, right? But now we need to sort of get the voice out there and teach people about what is right, what is wrong, what to avoid. How much do you value your health? How much do you value your temple? And I always say, we might be we're all born differently, and we all have a different sort of life expectancy or a mortality rate. But do you think about the choices that you make today, how it will affect the future? I don't think people live with this awareness. So if I said everything you're doing today, and I could actually quantify it, said it's taking 3 days off your life in the future, and that can even relate to smoking, drinking, drugs. Like if I said every time you do drinking this weekend, and a little bit of drugs, you're shaving off 3 years of your life, 5 years of your life, 10 years of your life, you know. And again, now we bring this back to the subject at hand. Everything you're eating, that's shaving off years of your life. Would you want to eat all that stuff? Would you make the same food choices, having that awareness? Because I come to think, I'm not so sure. Maybe you might have slip-ups, because not everyone's perfect, right? There will be some days you're like, actually, I just really, really want it. I really just want that chocolate, or I really want that burger, or I really want those crisps. And that's okay, because you're doing it in moderation. But unfortunately, there's an imbalance and misunderstanding about moderation these days, because moderation is key to everything in life, because people can do things in excess, and that might be even simple things like over-exercising or drinking too much water. But, you know, we're focusing it on more the negative aspects. If you're eating too much of something, or, you know, ingesting too much of something in terms of fluids, it's not healthy for you. You're shaving off your life, you know, and in a sense, it's kind of becoming accountable for yourself. Are you responsible in saying you acknowledge the decisions you're making, because you have to be responsible for you? No one can be responsible for you, unfortunately, in this life. You can't really just hand over the keys. And you may have had the privilege that when you were a child, that could be the case. You know, your parents looked after you so nicely, but at some point, whether it's 16 or 18 or even older, you have to do you. And that starts with, you know, the most fundamental thing. What are you supplementing yourself with nutritionally? So, you know, and I do think as well, this very, very interesting subject about everything that we're learning and get fed with in terms of information purposes. You know, do we question these things, right? So, I mean, in sort of my programming at the moment, it's like vegan's better, because, you know, if you eat meat, you're eating animals that are being killed, you're advocating animals to be slaughtered. But, you know, what about sort of the destruction of the planet for how much water is being used to grow more vegetables? You know, every aspect has a pro and a con, right? But we have to ask ourselves, right, what is the right thing to follow? What is the better thing? You know, and I've got some questions written down here, like, should you eat carbs or not? You know, can you eat carbs with protein, or does it have to be split up? Do you have to eat food groups individually or together? You know, should you be vegan, or should you be vegetarian? Or is plant-based better than meat? Is meat necessary? Or even the big fad about following the blood group diet, is that good for you? You know, we don't know. There's just too many questions out there. So, you know, it really comes, and I do believe boils down to a trial and error exercise. You know, a diet that was good for me when I was younger is not good for me now. A diet that's good for me is not good for the other person. So, you know, instead of following again this mentality of copying people, you just got to figure out what works for you. And that again comes back to figuring out your health, and the information tools out there that are accessible to you, you need to access them, right? And yeah, so I just sort of say that, going back to, is this good for you? Is it bad for you? Or even if it's neutral. So there's three technical terminologies, words that is used. So I call it biogenic. That means it's good for you. It gives you energy, right? And bioacidic is it's bad for you and takes energy away. So in my case, you would think, okay, I eat spinach. It's bioacidic for me because it makes me ill, makes me bloated, makes me tired, takes energy away. It's bad for me, right? Whereas, for example, meat, in my case, is biogenic. So it's good for me. It gives me iron, makes me feel strong. It gives me good protein. It helps continue to build the muscles I'm developing throughout exercise, etc. But if you eat a food that's neutral, it's called biostatic. So that's quite interesting. So I think if you wanna sound intelligent, people will be like, oh yeah, I don't know about this food. It's quite bioacidic for me, or it's biogenic for me, or it's biostatic. People will be like, what bloody book have you been reading? Oh, you're like, no, I'm just listening to this crazy chick on this podcast. But interestingly, we need to also know that there are some food groups that are just bad in general, just bad, and ideally, if possible, avoiding it everywhere, anywhere, because it's hidden even in some foods that we don't even know. Like sugar is evil. It's so evil, but it's laced in almost everything, and people don't even know anymore because it's become so common. So in this regard, it's sort of like I'm saying to you, okay, again, everyone is unique, and, there are some foods that are good for you, not bad for you, but generally we can consider these following foods to be bioacidic for everyone. And of course, I've just mentioned the first one, sugar. Sugar is evil. Yeah. Rancid fats. Anything genetically modified, which unfortunately predominantly many things are. So if you can try find farmers markets or fresh food or grow your own, it's always highly recommended. Foods that are not real or processed, and now we're talking like fast food, takeaways, additives and preservatives. So what are those? These are foods that are these are items that are basically put into foods to make them last longer, or maybe to make them taste better. But really, again, in summary, just poison. And how will you know? And how will you know this? And, I'm such a big advocate on educating people. Please look at food labels, because truly what you read, like almond milk, the whole ingredient is basically 2% almonds. So you need to see what's inside there. A lot of additives, a lot of substitutes, a lot of code names. And these are those names that you see like E144, E207, E da-da-da-da-da. These are all preservatives. Basically so bad, these names, that they have to give them special codes, because then when you read them on the label, you don't even know what that, basically translates to. So it's just sort of safer than, again, living in a land of ignorance, thinking it's okay, but meanwhile it's really, really bad. And additives and flavorings, I think, are also another big important one to bring up, because, toxic flavorings, all terrible for you. And to a point now that even had to say, they call it natural flavoring. So you think natural, and then your mind just sort of subliminally thinks natural means good, it's natural, but it's not. It's still bad, still toxic. So again, if you can try avoid it as much as possible, it's good. And I think just even having said this today, just going and looking at food labels, if you just had the one takeaway for the day, I think will probably profoundly shift and change your mind, because so many things have things in that you would just have never even assumed. Like when I started doing it, I was like, this is literally blowing my mind. Yeah, so just have to be aware about it, because especially when you get your results back in terms of whatever your intolerances or allergies could be, you'll come to find that these are laced in the ingredients, and you think, well, I can eat this because it doesn't have X, Y, and Z, but actually it might just do. So again, just expressing caution to the wind. Just to be mindful. It doesn't hurt, because it takes an extra 10-15 seconds to just quickly scan. And then the more you do it, the faster you get at it. And then again, you're making better, healthier food choices, that overall is just giving you those years back that you might have unconsciously been taking away for however long it's been. And the last one, I'm going to say, that probably a lot of people should know, it's carcinogenic, meaning cancer-causing in nature, is aspartame. So that's a sweetener that gets added to, I would probably say, everything, because sort of the logic is now that everyone is on this focus of not getting diabetes and not becoming overweight. So they're going for everything that's diet, that's zero, diet, sugar-free, now with added sweetener. So it's like, it feels like this pendulum going from oscillating from the left now going to the right, where people are so focused on like, oh yeah, this is fat free or this has no sugar, but okay, so you're not going to get sick or have diabetes, great, but now you're going to the opposite spectrum of, okay, it's cancer causing though. Now, have you thought about that? Have you thought about all the carcinogenic effects that you're having by putting all of these artificial substances? So the real answer should be, you shouldn't be having any of these things if it's got all of that in anyway. And I mean, this comes in so many forms, you know, and unfortunately, even in natural, not natural, but health products, you know, like for example, getting a, you know, sort of a protein shake or a nutritional supplement that's like to add flavoring into it. They go, yeah, with added sweetener, it's aspartame. It's terrible, you know, cutting out. Or, I mean, the common one I used to have before I became educated was Canderel in all of my coffees. When I used to drink coffee when I was in corporate, you can find it in any type of sweets or cookies or pastries, or I mean, it's everywhere. You'll literally find it, you know, aspartame. It's aspartame, aspartame. I was trained to say it was aspartame. So it's just really, really powerful just to, again, read your food label and identify that. But the idea is we need to also learn moderation, right? We're living in the world of instant gratification. You know, back in the day when we were tribes people, we'd have to go out and hunt for food, and that might take a week, that might take 2 weeks, and you're surviving on basic minimum ingredients such as, you know, fruits, seeds, nuts, that kind of thing, and not overeating. But sort of now, you know, at a click of our fingers or a click of a button or go to the shops, we instantly have so much food overload that we are overeating as a population, and sort of trying to find that regulation is hard because we've been in a certain psychology, a certain programming, a certain society's sort of way of life, you know, and routine and protocol, sort of trying to now unwind all of those roots and then come back to the idea of just being, or coming back to your roots, really. I think that's really the nicest thing to say. It's just coming back to a form of balance, but it will take some time. There'll be kinks in the road. There'll be some difficulties, but at the end of the day, you'll still be making more progress than someone who's not, you know. And I always say the analogy of that, you know, even if you're doing 1 lap around the sofa, it's still 1 lap more than you would have ever done. And progress is progress, even if it's just 1% or 2%. But at the end of the day, this is quite a multi-layered cake that we can start addressing from right now, from today. And I think the first thing is sort of creating this mind-body awareness and connection, because I always see the body as a separate person, really, a separate being that communicates with you, and then obviously with the mind. And a lot of people have this disconnect, sort of until they come work with me, where I start creating that conscious awareness and, you know, sort of that communication channel of saying, listen to your body, tune into your body, check in with your body. What is it telling you? What is it expressing? What are you not doing? What does it need? How can you help? Right? So sort of just coming in and start creating this communication pathway to how best to improve your life, improve your health, improve your body. Because you fix your physical, that gives you all that capacity that you would have been spending energy on to then bring it up to the emotional level. And we all have stuff that we're dealing with emotionally. Then we can start addressing that more coherently, more presently as well. And then going up to the next level, then we can work on our sort of goals in life and our purposes and what we, you know, what we want to achieve, and give time for that spiritual aspect. And whether that's develop more skills, whether that's trying to achieve more things, it could be simple as reading more books, or, you know, going on different courses, or, you know, cooking better food, spending more time with people, or pets. It's just really, it's so individual, but very, very useful. So I'm just going to read to you again what I wrote down, but I just think it's really, really helpful just to make sure I've crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's. As part of my philosophy, I'd like all clients that I work with to have a clear understanding between the two different aspects of an allergy and intolerance, as this enables and empowers you to make informed and educated decisions while you're not in my presence, right? So it's really useful to understand the difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance, as these are two separate conditions. So if you ever suspect that you're suffering either from a food allergy or an intolerance, it could be a distressing time for you, especially if your symptoms are affecting the quality of your life. So here, you can either determine you have an allergy and intolerance. It's actually really, really, really easy. It's easier than you think. And I think I've obviously explained that throughout the earlier minutes of this podcast. But boiling it down is, you'll know if it's an intolerance or an allergy just through the expression of the reaction time. So an allergy has a more rapid response because it's responding from the body's immune system to a particular food. And the onset of intolerance symptoms have a slower process. And I remember when I was younger, I remember reading that it can take up to 3 days. And this was reading an article about dairy intolerance or lactose intolerance, that you can have a slower process time to show or express symptoms. So food intolerance and food allergy are often thought to be variations of the same thing and are usually thrown around in the same conversation. But the biological processes behind them and how they affect you are very different. So I hope from today, just explaining to you the differences, that maybe when you go out and you start talking about these things, because it's quite a popular conversational topic to discuss between friends or at restaurants or just in general when you're talking about your health, just to sort of be more clear about the difference. Because in fact, there was a poll that was done and a survey that was done. Out of 1,000 UK respondents, it was found that majority of the people who were questioned were unable to differentiate between the two conditions. And basically, many of the respondents just assumed that it was the same thing. So hopefully today you'll not be part of that survey, in the sense that, that statistic of people that now you know. So just again, a food allergy is when the body's immune system believes that it's being invaded, and it produces something called IgE, so immunoglobulin E, antibodies to fight off food or drink ingredient it mistakenly considers to be harmful to the body. So in the case of a food allergy, reactions can range from mild to severe and may affect one or more systems in the body, such as digestion, respiratory, or even skin. And in severe cases, however, the immune system triggers a response throughout the body, so resulting in a systematic reaction or anaphylaxis, which is potentially fatal and would need immediate medical attention. Right, so just clearly distinguishing that again about allergy. And regarding food intolerance, so alarmingly, in the same poll of this 1,000 UK respondents, 64% thought that food intolerance can trigger anaphylaxis, which is obviously not the case. So food intolerance is how we can classify it as a delayed biological reaction, which, although uncomfortable and unpleasant, very unpleasant, it's not life-threatening, right? So if food intolerance is often caused by difficulty to digest certain foods with symptoms, which can emerge itself within hours, even days later. So depending on the type of food intolerance, the immune system can sometimes identify food protein particles as foreign when they enter the bloodstream and produce something called IgE antibodies to attack the food in question. So let's going to break down the science. You've most likely caught on to the fact that a food allergy produces IgE antibodies, and food intolerances, on the other hand, take different forms, such as lactose intolerance and celiac disease, which is to wheat, In this case, we look at IgE mediated intolerances. So the blood testing lab that I work with, that I'm partnered with, defines food intolerances as food-specific IgG reaction. So there are 4 subtypes. You can get IgG, IgG1, which is the most prevalent, making up around 60 to 70% of your total IgG, followed by IG2, which is 20 to 30%, and then 3 is 5 to 8%, and 4 only makes up 1 to 4% of the IgG antibodies present. And just to sort of swing that back, the idea again is you need to cut out foods you are allergic to completely. And intolerances, the idea is you can eliminate them from your diet for X amount of time, so that reactivity that your body is responding to is reduced or completely eradicated or eliminated. And then the idea is within time, you can slowly reintroduce it into your diet at a more moderate level, because sometimes it's something you could be having every day. So I'm very, 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 very big on the idea of variety as the spice of life. Having something different every day to eat every day is super key. And I learned this when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I read this article that said, in order to keep your metabolism strong and going, you need to trick it every day by eating something different. So you may want to eat something every opposite day or alternative day, or for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can eat the same thing. Then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you eat the same thing. So every day that your system thinks, oh, I'm going to be re-eating the same breakfast, it doesn't function properly, the digestive system, because it's not being triggered to respond properly and break things down. So then if you eat something different, it goes, ooh, what's that? Ooh, I gotta work out to break this down. And then it keeps the things sort of flowing and going. And again, this has sort of led to my belief system so many years later, why people have reactions or reactivities in their body is because it's just so easy to eat the same thing every day. Like sometimes people go and make eggs every morning, or maybe oats every morning, or cereal every morning, or a pastry or a muffin and a coffee or whatever. Then that leads to, if you compound that like sort of over a week, then a month, then you see how much you're having of product X, then you go, oh, kind of makes sense why my body's responding in an intolerance format to it, because I was irritating myself with how much I'm consuming one thing, when if you really think about it, there's so much stuff out there available to, eat and consume, and especially with global advancement, where we have all the kind of foods that, was only once available in a certain season. So, again, I encourage another step or top tip to take from this episode today is really encourage a varied diet, try new things, even broaden your horizons a little bit, even if it's just going from blueberries to strawberries a day, from day to day or something, if it's, but don't be monotonous in your diet, because again, that's the kind of system you're creating. You need to challenge your metabolism sort of on the daily, even down to meal, if you will. Because for me, that will also keep your immune system strong. And again, you need to understand, most people have a lack of awareness about what the food they're eating, what kind of nutrition, the depth of the nutrition it contains. And we have so many needs, essential needs that we need to get from food, from our diet, that we're not getting naturally or creating naturally in our body, that we'd either have to supplement or get from food. And the goal would always be to get it from food first, right? But obviously food is a little bit too genetically modified, not organic enough these days, that it's hard. So we need to supplement it. But if you can, that will then encourage even better health, because then you're getting different minerals, different vitamins, different, breakdowns of fats, of food groups and all of that. And that again will lend to better overall health, stronger immunity, and Lord only knows we need that so much at the moment, because there's so many things going around. And I kind of have thought about, I feel people I've heard on the news actually yesterday that there was a statistic that's shown that actually people, viruses have gone down overall, like general viruses that have been going around for years have decreased statistically speaking because people have been in their homes over the last 2 years in COVID. But then I think to myself, but equally, haven't our immune systems also weakened because we haven't been challenging our bodies by going outside? We haven't been absorbing sun. We haven't been playing. We haven't been exercising enough. So again, one of the best ways to really try and keep your system strong is, again, your diet, and if it can be as varied as possible, do so. Yeah. And then so I'm going on so many tangents today, but it's so important, the subject. I can't give it enough attention. It's one of my most favorite subjects. So again, just quick and simple, what are the symptoms of a food allergy? So food allergy symptoms can vary from mild to severe and usually appearing within 30 minutes, if not sooner, up to 2 hours after eating or consuming something or ingesting something. But the most common signs and symptoms are itching or tingling in the mouth, swelling of the lips, face, tongue, throat, or other parts of the body, wheezing, shortness of breath or nasal congestion, hives, eczema or itching, nausea or vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, fainting, feeling lightheaded or dizzy, hay fever-like symptoms such as sneezing or itchy eyes, difficulty swallowing, and in severe cases, the immune system may trigger a response throughout the whole body, causing anaphylaxis. And the symptoms of anaphylaxis include swollen tongue or a lump in the throat sensation, breathing difficulties, a sudden drop in blood pressure, tightness in the chest, trouble swallowing or speaking, feeling dizzy or faint, rapid pulse, or a lack of consciousness. Anaphylaxis is a medical emergency, so anyone obviously experiencing any of these symptoms, you need to obviously seek immediate assistance, whether it's yourself or, anyone that's around you that you're with, to really take this quite seriously because, otherwise it could lead to fatality and nobody honestly wants that. Okay. And then if you sort of thinking now from this podcast, so much information, you're like, gosh, do I have a food allergy? So you may have experienced minor symptoms, but in most cases, or some cases, if you consume this culprit food, once again, it could lead to anaphylaxis. So the way your body responds to a food allergy can be unpredictable because sometimes you can react to something and sometimes not. So this then lends back to the example I was talking about, the chef. Maybe that day your body just said no, your immune system's no, so you need to just be quite cautious. So if you suspect a food allergy, typically your first point of call in terms of government aspect is go to your GP, who can then refer you to a specialist who can carry out certain tests like a skin prick test. But of course, I can also do it in terms of a private capacity. So again, if you can obviously go to the doctor, and if they will validate you and obviously, say that it's a legitimate reason to be able to test this, then that's fine. But also you need to be cautious out there when it comes to certain commercial tests on the internet that claim that they test food allergies, because usually you cannot test, let's call it positive, or show reactivity to foods if you haven't eaten them for quite some time. So the test might say you have no reaction to it at all, which then can obviously cause some serious consequences, because if you eat that trigger food and then you die, then obviously that's not good. So just need to make sure that whichever form or medium that you take to be able to test this, you just do it at a highly recognized place that's got a good reputation and legitimate. And so, yeah, anywhere around the world. And again, in summary, food intolerance, symptoms are abdominal pain, cramping, gas, bloating, vomiting, tiredness, headaches, migraines, skin issues, acne, eczema, psoriasis, constipation, diarrhea, anxiety, depression, respiratory issues such as rhinitis or sinusitis, joint pain, swelling, fibromyalgia, arthritis, which I've mentioned earlier. And this can take hours or up to 3 days to appear. So therefore, it can be difficult to pinpoint the reaction or maybe the culprit food, especially if you have more than one food trigger, right? But the question I thought was quite interesting that was asked is like, how common are food allergies and intolerances? Because, if we give it like 10, 15 years ago, people like never heard of these things. And now all of a sudden we're like the new era of like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I have this problem, I can't have that. Especially like for me in South Africa where I was raised, now that I have gone back so many times since having this new information, people are like, oh, allergy, schmallergy, everyone has problems, everyone's this, it's just normal, sort of in the bodybuilding sense that, that it's just when you would have a protein shake or eggs, it's common for you to fart a lot and they think that's normal. It's like, oh no, actually maybe you just genuinely have a problem with those food groups. But, the knowledge was not sort of prevalent there at the time. But it is actually estimated that food intolerances can affect up to 45% of the population, whereas allergy affects about 2% of the population. So it can be assumed that food intolerances have increased over the years, with speculation, and is obviously brought down to the changes in agricultural practices, antibiotic usage, which has detrimental effects on the body, and of course environmental pollution. So the last thing I sort of just want to talk about this is, it's very interesting. So you can be allergic and intolerant to the same item, food group, culprit, whatever you want to call it. But you can be intolerant and not allergic, but you can also be allergic and not intolerant. So sometimes you can have this kind of bad stroke of luck where it's both of them, or it can just be one of them. So then the idea is if it's intolerance only, then you can eliminate that out your diet and then slowly reintroduce it with time. Or sometimes it's just better to avoid it in its entirety. But if it's allergic, of course, ideally to avoid completely and not put it in your diet at all, because then these have the more severe consequences. And with the laboratory that I work with offering blood tests, they do it on a sort of ratio out of 6 in terms for the allergy testing. So you can have a low reactivity, moderate or high reactivity. So 1 to 2, 2 to 4, and then 4 to 6. So then you can also see the severity of it. So if you really want to, like, for example, have shellfish, which is quite a common one, then you can eat it if it's a low reactivity, but know that you might break out or have a skin rash or feel a little bit like of wheezing or a little bit of difficulty to breathe. But, again, that's your educated choice that you are accountable for. And then at least, if something happens, then you can call for emergency help. Whereas equally with intolerances, you just know if you're going to eat that, you're going to be suffering with the narcolepsy, as I call it. And then, of course, you can obviously then take protocols and measures post your enjoyment time to detox and heal. All right. So that was quite a intense, long, detailed yet very informative episode. So I really, really hope that from today's talk, it's been very, very good to help distinguish between an allergy and intolerance, and maybe through the way and tone of my communication, you really understand how serious this is and how important this is to do. And again, with the work that I do, I can do some of this online. I can get these lab tests sent directly to your home. So there's no issues in terms of like distance that you'd have to come in the clinic to do them. They finger prick tests that you can do at home. But the results would be sent to me, the practitioner, and then we can go through it with an appointment when we get your results to walk you through how to understand the results, interpret the results, and then what sort of substitute and means you can do or incorporate into your lifestyle if there are issues picked up. So I hope that's really, really helpful. And again, if possible, please like, subscribe, and also there will be There is already a video on my YouTube channel explaining how the finger prick test is performed. So if you need to see how it's done, it's on there as well. So again, just linking, if you're listening to this podcast, then you can also like and subscribe onto the YouTube channel, because there will be matching videos sometimes to just follow up or visually represent or demonstrate the topics at hand that I'm discussing. So wishing you a lovely day wherever you are, night, morning, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And now probably you're going to, at least probably after this episode, whatever you're going to be putting in your mouth, you're going to definitely be eating it very differently or chewing it very differently. And in terms of Chinese medicine, they say every mouthful that you eat, you should chew 33 times to properly break down the food and digest it properly. So think about how much you're chewing one bite, and also how you're feeling when you're eating that food. So again, bring that awareness and that sort of awareness back into the body and creating that communication channel with your body. Does this food agree with me? See how you feel. Even keeping a food diary is quite key. Just to pick up on, you eat this at a certain time and a few hours later you feel really off, funny, tired, itchy, rashy, breakout, etc. or quite swollen, which would lead to inflammation or water retention. And again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me through my different social media platforms, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, website. Or equally, if you're interested to get on top of your health today and want to book an appointment, and again, there's different modalities on how we test, but my favorite and almost sort of high-ranked recommended is the blood tests. Don't hesitate to contact me and we can book an appointment and get that sorted, so then you can figure out how to gain with more, becoming more informed about your health, how you can help yourself. Okay, so over and out. My name is Star Freudenberg, the medical mindset coach, and I'm wishing you a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.